1 2 1 2. I go by the name of DJ What, and you're now listening to the original Jeek podcast. Let's go.
Ready to make an entrance, so backward cut. Come on, cut for me.
Oh yeah. Whoa, slow down. Whoa, speed up.
Fresh.
Yeah, making me itch.
What up, Jeeks? I am the original Jeek, and my name is Rockin' Mr. Magic, and this is the original Jeek podcast. I am, my heart is full right now. My day has been going so well, and my day is going to continue to go excellently, because even though my brother, my ride or die, the one and only Unique DNA, could not join me today, I do have a guest joining me for the first time, and I'm very, very excited to talk to this sister. Without further ado, introducing my special guest, the owner of E616 Consulting, a space that is designed to empower Black women to thrive. She is the host of the I Have Given My Answer podcast. Welcome, Liz Gillum.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited to be in this space where I can talk with my blerd fam about what we've got going on. Because what a time to be a blerd right now. What a time.
We are just at the beginning of our rise within of blerds, because it was not in vogue when I was a young one to be Black and be a nerd, but like the phoenix from the ashes.
Yes.
Still we rise. Still we rise.
Yes.
So this is this episode here, listeners. This is our first episode of celebrating Mother's Day month. Yes, we're celebrating mothers all months of May. So this episode that you're listening to that is being released in the month of May, we're going to celebrate in all our Jeek spaces. And to start the show, as usual, we're going to do our short Q&A with Liz. But Liz, before we go into that, can you share with our listeners how they can find you, your business, your podcast out online?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are taking a hiatus right now. We've finished season 2 a little back in February. We're taking a bit of a hiatus now, but you can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts. But it's called I Have Given My Answer. And while the first season really focused on the stories and the lives of Black women and guests that I brought in, the second season is where we leaned more heavily into blerddom, and we connected. One of my favorite things to do is connect a lot of the stories that we know and love to real life. And I use that with my students and my clients to bring them through some difficult times. I'm a social worker, but I'm also an educator. And so I use the stories that we can see and that we love to bring out the themes that we need to see in our lives to help make it make sense so that it's not so scary. You see somebody else making it through it. One of the things that I use Wanda a lot to talk about grief, and we talk about grief and letting go and all of these things. And so being able to see what happens when Wanda doesn't address her grief, when Wanda is left alone after a string of grief incidents, losing her brother, losing Vision, losing her team, when she's left alone and then doesn't deal with the grief, what happens? And other people are now prisoner to your grief because you haven't dealt with it. So being able to use these stories and help my clients see other people go through it and come out of it gives them a chance to really move forward in their own lives. So the second episode, we've really leaned into that. There was a lot of Loki season 2 that we talked about in the second season. A lot of that. So, like I said, we are on Spotify, Apple, all these different, wherever you find your favorite podcast is where I have given my answer is. You can also find us on the socials at E616 Consulting and E616consulting.com. E616 being a nod to Earth 616. So that's usually I have to explain that a lot more, but in this space, I know everybody knows what I'm talking about. So yes.
When I saw that was the name, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm with it. I dig that. I know exactly where she's going with that.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So first question I have for you, Liz, here, and these are just designed to help our listeners get a better feel for a vibe check for you and your fandoms here.
Yeah.
If you were invited to join a superhero team, which team would you join?
This is going to surprise anybody listening who already knows me. But I would join the Guardians.
The Guardians of the Galaxy.
I would join the Guardians. That would surprise anyone. Because those were not among my favorites of the MCU films, but they are my favorite team. Okay. And I would want to join the Guardians because they're not fighting normal threats, right? And neither are the Avengers, neither are the Marvels, but the Guardians have to rely on each other in spaces, quite literally in space, where often the only foundation they have is their teamwork. They have to rely on each other. And so they have come to appreciate each other in such a way that I can do what I need to do over here, but I know that you're right there when I need to come back. Whereas the Avengers can split off and they can all go home. Tony can go back to Stark Tower and they can all go back to their places and then come back when they're needed. But the Guardians are a team that has become a family that knows what it is to really work together. And that's a team that I would love to be a part of.
Wow. That is a surprising answer, but it makes sense. Like you said, the other teams, they split off, they have their own lives, but the Guardians fight together, live together. Yeah. They're always together. They are definitely more of a familial bond than just a group of individuals that come together in team moments. Wow. Yeah. Excellent answer. Tying into the MCU, so we know the answer is not Guardians of the Galaxy.
It is not, no.
So which MCU film is your favorite?
Hands down, The Winter Soldier.
Okay.
Hands down, The Winter Soldier. For my most recent birthday, my son got me a painting, and it looks like Bucky when you zoom out, but when you zoom in, it's the entire script of the film written out. And yeah, that is my movie. Wow. I love Winter Soldier. All about it. I could spend an entire hour talking about the themes in Winter Soldier, so we won't we won't do all that. But I love that film.
We'll save that for another time. But okay,
yeah,
Winter Soldier, that's an excellent pick, and that sounds like a fantastic gift. Like wow, your son did his thing on that one.
He did. He did his big one with that one.
Yeah, that is a excellent choice. Okay, let's see here. Next question. What would be your ultimate cosplay? You yourself would put on, you take the time, you painstakingly do the research, you put it together. Like, what is your ultimate cosplay that you would do?
This is one that I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to do a gender bend Winter Soldier.
Okay.
There's so many layers to Bucky inside of the Winter Soldier, not just the costume and the garb, but so many layers to Bucky being trapped inside of this Winter Soldier that wearing that and doing it well and being I'm losing my word. I've lost the word. But being true to the costume and all of the pieces that go. It is not something that I would just simply, put together, based on, foam that I've painted but I would want to really put some intentionality behind every stitch behind it, because there was so much that uniform of his was holding together. Every knife was placed strategically, every strap was placed strategically, everything was in such a way to protect the investment of Hydra, but also to protect the body of James Buchanan.
Right.
And it's such a heavy, heavy burden. And so that is one that I've always wanted to do.
Wow. That I couldn't have asked for a better answer. I couldn't. Like most people were like, oh, and not to knock most people, but like, oh, this is, I want to be Storm because she's awesome, or I want to be Captain America because America. But the layers that I love it. I appreciate that, because like when I think about something that I would want to portray,
Yeah.
it means something to me to want to put on that costume or that uniform, because there's some type of connection to that character that I've personally identified with. So
Absolutely.
like if for me, like if I'm going to cosplay is something out of sci-fi, whether I'm like, if I'm James Kirk, or if I'm Spock, or if I'm Admiral Adama from Battlestar Galactica, or if I'm Spider-Man, as a big Spider-Man fan, like if I'm cosplaying Peter Parker, it's because I'm reflecting on all the things that make Parker unique. Or if I'm cosplaying as Miles, it's on all the things that make Miles unique and special. So I know I really dig the depths to your answer there.
Yeah.
If you could be a guest star in a film or TV series, which would you appear in?
So we're finally stepping away from the MCU here. We'll be back, but we'll be back. But if I could be a guest star, I would say Scandal.
Scandal. Okay.
Scandal. Absolutely.
Would you be fighting Olivia, or would you be helping Olivia?
I would be on her side. First of all, I would want to be on her side. Like, you don't want to be on the bad end of Olivia Pope. But I have what seems like a previous life. Both of my graduate degrees are in public policy. And so and they've got different flavors. Like, I've got a social work degree in public policy and an education graduate degree in education policy. So, I started off, and what again seems like a previous life, wanting to really work on public policy and be up at the Capitol. I live in the capital of Florida. I drive by the Capitol building every day, taking my son to school. So these are things that I'm used to seeing. And Florida politics has really taken a turn. And so it is not really, I prefer to use my energy with the people on the ground who need the support, instead of being up there trying to fight the big bads. But in a previous life where I still think that I have what it takes to go toe to toe with the big bads, Scandal would give me that. I think Scandal would really, not just my own power, but standing in the Black girl magic of Kerry Washington, Olivia Pope, Shonda Rhimes, the whole situation would just be really wonderful. So Scandal definitely gets my vote.
I get that. I can dig it. Scandal has a special place in my heart because I am a massive Joe Morton fan. And
yes.
Because when Joe plays a role, and him as Papa Pope,
unmatched.
I was like, you know what?
Unmatched.
I was like, you know what? Whatever side he's on, I'm with him. That's not the man to mess with.
Yes.
And I think about when he gave her that scolding in the hangar.
Oh, well, he said, "Come hell or high water, you're getting on that plane."
And make no mistake, I am the hell and the high water. Like,
yes,
you are getting on that plane. You are doing I flash, like, because my parents were. I come from a family that has a lot of success, where a lot of us late Gen Xers, early millennials in that exennial range, a lot of us are part of the generation where some of us are still the first to go to college, but a lot of us are second or third
Sure.
and some of
Yeah.
those generations go into college. So it's not the expectations different. And being that I'm one of those where my father has a psych degree, my mother has a
Mm-hmm.
poli-sci degree, my aunt
Mm.
is an English professor, my uncle is an attorney, my other aunt and uncle, graduates from Villanova. Like, I am from a, a family of academics.
Sure. Yeah.
So I had the Papa Pope style, not with the brutality in the voice, but the expectation, the
Absolutely.
twice as good speech. I got that. And it was
Yeah.
applied to my academics. It was applied to my athletics. Like, if you want to do this, if you want to be this, this is what you have to do. This is,
Mm-hmm.
you are expected to have to outthink them, to aim higher. Like when he was yelling at her,
Absolutely.
like, First Lady, didn't I teach you to aim higher?
Do
Like,
you have to be so
you have to be
mediocre?
still mediocre.
Woo!
I tell you, Liz, when I was in middle school, the word I hated the most after the N word was mediocre.
Yeah.
I hated it. I had a teacher tell me I was being mediocre, and when I wasn't, I just did not grasp what she was failing to teach me. And because of that, like, all the kids were calling me mediocre. They were calling me mediocre, that and this
Mm.
and that. And
Oof.
the thing that I was farthest from was mediocre. I was the
Absolutely.
best athlete. I got better grades than 95% of them. And the last thing I was like, you can call me a lot of things. You can't call me mediocre. Ain't none of
Absolutely.
y'all can call me mediocre. The only people that can call anything I do mediocre are the people who've accomplished more than I have. So if my parents tell me I'm giving a mediocre effort, I probably am.
Yes.
'Cause I probably was. And there were times they called me out on it, in my academics, in the music. I was a violinist. My parents had me playing the violin.
Yep.
You know, they would call me out, and I would get upset, and I would be like, you know what? Yeah. And my father
Yeah.
always told me, especially when I hit the basketball court, Matthew, be the hardest worker out there. And
Mm-hmm.
when Joe Morton delivers that speech, it is 18 years of my parents loving, sometimes harshly loving, but sometimes we
Yes.
have to have that, especially as
Mm-hmm.
Black folks in this world, we have to deal with that. But the love and concern over all the years of upbringing and instilling into
Yeah.
me all that I do into with my parents was encapsulated in that fantastic performance. This scandal, yes, I completely feel, because I would be, if I would guess, that I would be right there with Papa Pope. Like, all right, we making it happen behind the scenes, we getting it done. Like, and
Yes.
Olivia as a character, because then when that scene happened, then I got to see, like, wow, she really is her father's daughter.
Oh
Like,
yes.
she's been
Oh
doing
yes.
everything he's been doing, just on a smaller scale. Like, she is her father's daughter. Like,
Yes.
so
Yes.
good. Oh my God.
I
Okay.
will never forget when she got in the limo and she was like, "Dad," and then it just ended. It was season finale, and we were all like, "No, you
Right?
can't do this."
Especially because he had just come off of doing Eureka, where he was, the charming scientist, quirky, very nice, soft guy, and then it's like,
Yeah.
and Joe's like, "Nah, not soft no more."
Yes.
He'll probably never hear this, but shout out to Joe Morton. Been one of
Absolutely.
my favorite actors since Brother from Another Planet, and gracious enough to interact with me on Facebook during the 2016 election was happening. He had a Facebook post, and I commented on it. So I was trying to be a little more hopeful than most people, and we had a fantastic back and forth. And I was like,
Yeah.
"This is why I like you, dude. Like this
Yes.
is exactly why I love you, man. Like, because I'm nobody to him. You don't
Mm.
have to take the time to have discourse with a stranger on the internet. Several years, 20 plus years, your junior.
Right.
But to have respectable uh, conversation, but both with the mindset of trying to go forward in a positive manner,
Mm-hmm.
because neither one of us like or trust the system on any side. Like, but we're just trying to go. We're trying to go forward in a positive manner. And I was like,
Yeah.
why can't the rest be like that? Like so awesome. All right. Before I wax on more about the love I have for Joe Morton, last question: if you were a character in any Marvel universe, which would you? Actually, you know what? I'm going to change this up because I'm going to ask you. Yeah, I'm going to change this up. I'm going to ask that last before we wrap up the show. So I want to say this: if you were a character in any Marvel universe, what power set would you choose?
I thought I was ready, Matt. And
I had to throw a curveball. This is also a sports show, so I did have to throw you a curveball.
That's fair. What power set would I have? Oh my goodness. My son asks me this all the time and I give him an answer but I want to, oh man. I don't like heights, so we're not flying.
Okay.
We're not flying.
I respect that.
Do you know what? In the spirit of X-Men 97.
Okay.
In the spirit of that, I would love Rogue's power set.
Okay.
The ability to I think back to the first episode of the original X-Men cartoon, when Wolverine was going out of his mind, and she had to stop him. She's like, I need to take just enough of your power to calm you down, but not to hurt you.
Right.
That is a power that I think many of us, those of us who see ourselves as activists, those of us who are jaded by the system, like you just mentioned, would really appreciate being able to do. Let me chill you down a little bit. Not enough to hurt you, but enough for some justice to really see its way through. Let me calm you down a little bit. So I definitely would appreciate that skill set.
No, that resonates a lot with me. I just said that to my daughter. One of my twin girls is a type 1 diabetic. And she was at this particular moment a couple days ago just expressing frustration because it's something she has to deal with, barring a miraculous healing from the Lord. That's something she's going to have to deal with for her entire life.
Right.
And she was being frustrated, and I said, baby, I would take it away from you if I could.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I could do what Jesus did, and I could put my hand upon you and take it upon myself, it would be done. Like,
without a doubt, without a hesitation,
without a moment's hesitation.
Yeah.
And to be that Rogue can do that in a way, because she's had to do it, and just touch here. Okay, long enough, took the edge off, and bear that. That's something that to be able to do that for people, especially those that you are close to, that you love, that you have compassion for, because sometimes people just need a load off.
Exactly.
And the X-Men carry tremendous loads.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned with Wolverine, like people forget that the character of James Howlett is like 150 years old. Like mind wiped how many times, like the mental anguish that character goes through. Like, that man deserves to have a load off.
Just a little bit, just a little edge off.
Just to take a load off, whether it's the rage, whether it's the pain that he's not expressing mentally. Like, why do you think the guy drinks so much beer? Like, I mean, the guy's going through a lot.
Yes.
No, that would be a wonderful gift to be able to have, just to, even though it's temporary, to just give that bit of relief to people. No, that is a fantastic choice. That is fantastic. We're going to shift into we have a section we call "What are you PWC?" What are you playing, watching, or creating? And because this kind of ties into what you do with E616, it's going to be a little more serious. But to share a bit more about it, can you tell me what was the impetus? What was the drive that kickstarted you to starting E616?
I am always thrilled to tell this story. When I was in academia, I was going for a PhD. I never wanted a PhD. I never wanted to teach in academia. I wanted to get the degree to be better at what I'm good at. I wanted to learn the skills, but the degree, that was never a big deal to me. But I just, if there was a chance for me to learn and improve my skills, then I wanted to take it. And they were paying for it. So yeah,
Makes
I'll
sense.
do that. I'll do that.
Free is for me. Okay.
Free is for me, right?
That's
so
right.
I was ready to do that. And I went in my master's research. I did zero tolerance policies and the disproportionate impacts of discipline on Black youth. I was a teacher before then. I taught in Title I schools. I went to a Title I school. I'm a teacher. I'm a mother to a Black son. These are important issues to me, right?
Absolutely.
And so I came in wanting to research discipline in Black youth. And then again, as I stated earlier, Florida education, Florida politics just took a wild turn. And I decided that I wanted to focus more on helping the students and showing them from positions of power and not deficit. So let's not look at how we're looking at Black students as being less than, but let's look at how we can empower them to survive outside of this system that is going to system. The system going system.
Right.
And I got a lot of pushback from my advisor on that. She did not understand why it was necessary. And now they're teaching me all of these things in theory about how Black students are being disproportionately impacted by discipline and all of the theoretical statistics she was teaching me. But when I wanted to make it real, I was told that wasn't really
practical application.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was, just cut down at every turn.
Wow.
And so I took my time and started focusing on the things that I loved. I have written and published a framework based on Janelle Monáe's album Dirty Computer, and how to work with and treat Black women in higher education. That was one of the first things that I did, was looking into that. And so I started to then use the fandoms that I loved to reach out to and love on Black children and Black women. That was also poo-pooed upon by that advisor. So I ended up leaving her and going to a different advisor. But so much damage had been done to me, so much damage. And then the pandemic happened. And I ended up leaving the program. I took a year off to homeschool our son and ended up leaving the program. I was like, I don't need this. I don't need to be stressed like this. If anything has put anything into perspective, it is being at home with my son, seeing what good we can do here. I don't need this. Y'all can keep it. Right. And so the advisor that I ended with said, well, you've done all of this. You can at least have an educational specialist. Like, you've done the work. Let's not just have you leave with nothing. Right. So I ended up keeping that. And the second advisor was very, very positive and very supportive of me looking into pop culture. But I was so frustrated with how my fire had been snuffed out. And there's always people who will say, well, you don't give them that much power. But it's hard. It's hard to keep going and keep getting knocked down by the people who are at a higher stature than you, the people who have the say over what you can and cannot study or get signed off on. It's hard. And when you're doing it by yourself, and I wasn't just a student, I wasn't a traditional student. I've got a family, I've got other things to do. And so I couldn't give her 100% of my fight. And I didn't want another Black woman to feel that way. And so I started this business, and I kind of bumped around a little bit trying to figure out where to go and what I wanted to do. And I spent a lot of time molding my business into what other people had been doing, because that seemed to work for them. And, well, maybe I can just do this and help teachers, since I know that teachers need help. Or maybe I can do this and just help Black women talk about things like this because it worked for this person. And, this year, I said, All of that is fine and good, but there are other people doing that. No one is talking to blerd girls like this. Like, we've got spaces, we've got Facebook groups, but no one is really using those fandoms that we love. And not just the nerdy fandoms, but fandoms are broad. Like, I'll be doing a teaching unit on Hot Girl Summer, where I'm going to talk about the Black feminism of female rappers, from Foxy Brown, Little Kim, all the way up, or one thing that a lot of Black women have asked for is a scandal class that I'll be doing at the end of the year, and using those lessons from that popular culture to teach. And so I want Black women to realize that it's okay to be multifaceted. It's okay to love all of these things that we love. And it's okay to find healing while also loving those things. So if we want to talk about Wanda, if we want to talk about Avatar, but also learn about burnout and how we can get out of that, how Aang moving into the Avatar state was really just him in a serious moment of burnout, and his body was just like, enough of this. If we can look at that and make sure that we don't get to that point, let's do that. And so I like to use what we already love to remind us how to love ourselves outside of the white gaze, outside of the need for their approval. This is the time for us to be able to find a space for us to find that healing. And so that's where I got the heart behind E616. It's because it's our world. And I think that all of us have it within us to be heroes. But on Earth 616, those are just ordinary people. Steve Rogers, Peter Parker, Tony Stark, ordinary people who just had that one spark of support that led them to be a hero. And if I can be that on my E616 for somebody else, then that's what I want to do. So that's where the business came from, but also why we named it E616.
That is a fantastic recollection. I really appreciate that. That is amazing. I'm glad you found your niche that connects your love and your passion, as far as enjoyment-wise, to your passion as an academic and as a nurturer, someone who is looking to help people and improve their life. And that is such... that just resonates a lot. For me, I know I mentioned to you offline, I did the same when I was in active ministry. And even though I don't do that professionally anymore, it's something that I still do to this day. When I'm talking to my kids, I will pull examples from popular culture to illustrate and help get it into their minds what I'm trying to express to them. And a lot of people think it's cheesy or think it's very gimmicky to use pop culture in a teaching setting, but I disagree. I think it's one of the best ways to do it because it's storytelling, and the best teachers in history are storytellers. And even when I would even get pushback from people, within the Christian community, I would say to them, "You do realize Jesus used parables like
all the time,
on the regular, fam. Like, you do know, like that whole prodigal son thing wasn't a story that happened. He gave an illustration for you to comprehend what he was saying easier. Like, let's not act like stories are not what the base of what gets us through so much knowledge and understanding, and things that we retain are generally connected to a recollection, to a story, to an epic that we can tie into, that when in the time of stress, the time of need, that it comes to us in that recollection. It's why the math and sciences are generally harder for most people, because there's not that connection that can be made with those. You can't just reference 3 times 3 to a story, but you can reference Benjamin Banneker and George Washington Carver and Paul Revere and anybody within history and such, because there's story there. There's something that makes an emotional response, not just a memory response. And those two responses in conjunction, make you react differently than just a head knowledge response.
Well, when I started teaching, my first teaching job, I was a chemistry teacher. And like I stated earlier, I taught in Title I schools because that's where I went to school, and those are my babies. Those are my babies.
Yeah.
And you cannot just come in talking about anionic compounds. You got to break it down, you
Yeah.
know? And so I was using popular culture then. And what I have learned, and one of the things that I wrote a lot about in my research is that, I remind people that at one point Shakespeare was considered popular culture.
That's right.
The Grapes of Wrath, Steinbeck, popular culture.
Culture, yeah.
And we use those things all the time. And
All
so
the time.
when people get up in arms about the use of popular culture and the use of various media, I don't see it as any more than gatekeeping.
Yeah.
Because they want to control the ways in which we learn. And they understand. And I'm not saying that in terms of a Fahrenheit 451 type situation, right? But
Right.
just it's what people are used to, and people don't like change.
No,
And so that's what I'm saying. People don't like change, and they don't like the idea that there is another way to go about something. And it just increases accessibility. That's all.
Right.
It just brings it to more people. And so I enjoy using popular culture because that is how I got a lot of my students to see, okay, maybe this isn't so hard. If I think about it like this, I can make sense of it. And then we end up with more Black scientists and more Black mathematicians because they're not afraid of the numbers or the elements on a page. They know that they can work these things out. And so I just find that folks who are against popular culture don't really understand what popular culture is.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's funny you mentioned that because even though, well, science it wasn't so bad, but math I was terrible at. But like Peter Parker, for example,
Yes.
genius kid, invented his web shooters, Tony Stark, genius level. People are inspired by those characters to pursue STEM. I, as a kid, was a big fan of Rocket Racer because he was a teenager,
Yeah.
just as smart as Spider-Man, created his own, rocket-powered skateboard and was out there, being a hero. And he happened to look like me, and even though I realized in high school that STEM wasn't going to be for me, I'm a word guy. I was like, this English major thing and this history minor thing, that's more my speed. That's more my natural abilities. But
Yeah.
I still, like, even to this day, as a grown man, I still have the interest, the curiosity, the wish that I could be more talented, if I had the proclivities to exercise in the STEM world, because it fascinates me. And that curiosity that from childhood has never left me, despite the fact that I just don't have the requisite abilities to
Right.
to engage in that world. I still would love, and I still love talking to people, and I love hearing from, like, I love listening to Neil deGrasse Tyson, because
Yeah.
he
Yep.
understands things that interest me, even if it's on a theoretical space, that I love to just hear and learn about and try to get a grasp on. And we all should be able to have that type of inspiration from things like comic books, like science fiction,
Yes.
like fantasy, and be able to apply that to real life. Because, like you said, Shakespeare was popular culture, and just because now it's a classic doesn't mean that it wasn't born a classic. It didn't come out
Right.
as a classic. There was a time where people probably considered it avant-garde, and people
Yes.
considered it revolutionary. And and now we look at things that were considered revolutionary, back in the 70s and 80s, and now those are classics. Now now Dune is a classic, where Dune was not a classic when Herbert
Right.
wrote it, and now we've got, multiple Dune movies coming out, and people are having that literary work in a whole higher sense of, before only nerds read Dune, and only nerds knew what Dune was. Now
Right.
Dune is mainstream. Now anime is
Absolutely.
becoming mainstream. Comic books are becoming, and superhero movies are becoming more mainstream. Where before you got clowned for that, now it's becoming more and more a part of everyday life.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I think popular culture, I'm excited for where we're getting to go with it and the conversations we're getting to have around it, especially as blerds. I'm so excited to be a part of this space. I really am.
Well, let's talk about that a little more because you mentioned gatekeeping. And
Yeah.
gatekeeping is something I've noticed a lot, and I am ashamed to admit that at times I have gatekept on different levels. Sometimes not necessarily intentional, but I've done it, and I think most people, to some extent, wittingly or unwittingly, have. But in particular, when it comes to blerd women, tend to face a lot of gatekeepers for
Absolutely.
various reasons, even within the blerd community.
Yeah.
Speak to me about how, through what you're doing, you are helping combat some of that gatekeeping, because if especially a younger blerd woman, she can't help not knowing what some people, quote unquote, would expect you to know to be considered a fan of Star Wars or a fan of Marvel or a fan of Batman and etc. How are you helping your clients or anyone on your podcast to overcome those objections that unfortunately they get in the space?
There's a two-part answer here.
Okay.
So one of the things that I've noticed in some of the groups that I'm in, some of the Facebook groups, some of the Reddit pages. Actually, you know what? I'll take that back, because Reddit, to my great surprise, Reddit pages that I participate in are often very supportive.
Okay.
And they
jungle,
will.
So I'm surprised to hear that.
It is a jungle, right? And so I have been very lucky to find Reddit pages where people will they will link back to previous media that can help answer questions. They're very helpful, very helpful.
Okay.
So let me retract the Reddit statement. But in Facebook groups that I'm a part of, you've still got a few of the people who are like, "Oh, you're a fan of this? Tell me what this means, and let's go back." And what I've noticed is that the people who partake in that level of gatekeeping, it doesn't stop at being a nerd or a geek.
Right. It's whatever.
It's anything that can give them any air of superiority. And it's very easy for them to pick on Black women in that space, in anything. It's very easy to pigeonhole us into what we are supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And there's quotes there for the listeners. And then do their best to keep us there. And so while I get frustrated with people who are gatekeepers or who are, well, if you didn't read the comics, you shouldn't be asking questions. But there's almost a century of data and of backlogged media for some of these characters. Give people a break, like chill out. When people behave in that way, those folks don't really handle diversity and topics of diversity in the best way. So I find it better to not give them too much of my energy. Now I will swoop in and defend the person that they are attacking. But I won't do so much with them because I consider them to be a lost cause. Now, and again, that is something I swore off doing when I left academia. I'm not going to make it easy for you to pigeonhole me.
Right.
And I'm not going to sit by and watch you do it either. And so what E616 does is we are very intentional about creating a space for Black women to come in and enjoy. Then you come in and you enjoy whatever fandom you want to enjoy. We're not here to gatekeep. There are times where we'll be having a conversation. We just finished a 3-month sprint where we talked about the MCU and different lessons within the MCU. Mm-hmm. And sure, if you are not, up on Marvel, you're going to miss some things, but that's not to say that we're going to say, well, you should have come in prepared. You just need to say, I didn't see all of the Thor movies. What are you talking about? And then we'll take it back. You know what I mean? But there is a space.
And then you have homework to do.
Yes, I'll give a watch list in a heartbeat, Right. And so there's ways to help people catch up. Now, what I won't do, I made the mistake once and anybody, you can call this gatekeeping. I made the mistake once of taking a friend who was not at all a Marvel fan to see Black Panther with us on the premiere.
Mm.
And I say it was a mistake because she had 100 questions. And I was like,
Yeah, should
not
have
right
watched the
now.
movie.
I was like, not right now. And I felt bad. I felt so bad. But she's like, his dad died? When did his dad die? And I was like, please stop talking.
You have to give me my money back for this ticket. You done number talk this whole time.
I was like, come on, man, what is happening? And and then at the end, she started to get up, and I was like, please sit down. You're embarrassing me. Sit down. And then Bucky comes out, and she's like, who is that? And I was like, never again. Never again.
Like,
right?
dear God, no, why?
So, I always laugh at that one.
I guess. So there's some gatekeeping that I don't think is. So there's gatekeeping. I view gatekeeping two ways. One is mostly harmful, and it's designed to keep people. It's designed to keep people out. And the other gatekeeping, which I think people should practice, is the gatekeeping that's not saying I'm keeping you out, but it may not be time to let you in. Because if I let you in, you're going to be exposed to things that you might not be ready to discuss. So if you want to be in, cool, we would love to have you in. Do you understand X, Y, and Z? No? Cool. Well, you should really understand X, Y, and Z, because if you don't, you're going to be lost in this conversation. So, to give an example of that, I've noticed that when I'm talking, I recorded an episode not that long ago I did with a young man in the UK. We were talking about and he's writing an audio drama based on the Justice League. And I was asking him some different things, and some things he really was struggling to answer because he was born in the early 2000s. So he doesn't. I'm the last year Gen X. I'm an '80s baby. I've been at this for a long time compared to
minute.
Yeah, I've been at this for. That's why I call myself the original Jeek. I am that dude who was an athlete and a nerd at the same time. I was Star Trek, sci-fi, Star Wars, and comics. Back before it was cool at all. So but I can't have the expectation of this young man to know about the significance of the fact that he knew about Michael Keaton's Batman alone is more than I can ask, because it came out 15, 16 years before the boy was born.
Right.
It's one of those things where hey, I'm not keeping you out. I'm just letting you understand there's a slight barrier here. And if you go past the barrier, you might get lost. But so I'm not saying you can't come in. Just understand you may not understand what's going on in here. It's like going into an area without a map. If you don't have your map, you might get lost. And
so I do that with my business to protect the space for Black women. And I've got it on my website because people will ask me, well, I'm not a Black woman. Can I attend? You certainly may, as long as you understand that you are a guest in this space. Your concerns will not be centered. It is in the FAQs on my website. Your concerns will not be centered. And should you disrupt in any way, you will be asked to leave. You will be removed. Because Black women have had to yield our time so much for others.
Yeah.
And we're not doing so that is a gatekeeping that I'm all right with that. I'm all right with that.
And you should. And I've also observed, and this is something that I've observed recently, a lot of Black men, and unfortunately a lot of male blurs doing to female blurs, is I kind of call it it's like revenge or spiteful gatekeeping. So when because and it's something that I know I did a couple times, and not just to Black women in particular, but to people in general, because again, coming up as a young person in the 80s and 90s, it was not cool, especially when you're Black. It was not cool to watch these things. Anime, I mean, those were considered white activities, if anything.
Yeah.
it is, and even amongst the white people I knew, like they weren't, especially as an athlete in the athletic world. You know, you I would go home and watch Star Trek with my mom, and I couldn't go back to school the next day and be like, "Hey, did you watch Star Trek?" And they'd be
Yeah.
like, "Huh? Like Captain who? Spock
Right.
what?" Like they're like, "Well, I don't watch that." So now, later now that they become adults, now these things become more a part of mainstream and more popular culture. Now these things are becoming more in vogue. Now these people who in the past were like, no, that's for nerds or that's whack. Now these people are like, oh yeah, I'm a fan. I've been a fan X for so many years. And then I give them the side eye and be like, all right, well, tell me this, and then that's when oh, so you were a fan, huh? All right, well,
Right.
then that's when the whole test your knowledge part of gatekeeping, comes out, which unfortunately happens way too often to blerd women, and not enough blerd men are really giving the grace to other blerds, male or female, that are coming
Mm-hmm.
into a fandom that may have been vocal against that fandom, but now
Right.
they're into it, and there's not much grace going on that's being extended to those newer
Right.
people
Yeah.
within the space. Um,
Right.
have you had to help anyone that's going through that type of pushback as they're trying to express themselves within this space, or even internally within your groups where people where blerds have been more experienced are kind of pushing it back against the newer ones?
Yeah. And what I've noticed, I sh- I shame the gatekeepers. I'm not ashamed of that, but I'm like, what are you doing? What is this? Like, this isn't the room for that. Like,
Right.
what do you gain from this? What do you gain? And what I always say to people is, it's hard enough being a blerd.
Mm-hmm.
Hard enough. There's enough of a weight on our shoulders to be black, to be a nerd, to put it together and be a blerd, right? How much easier would it be if you would just let somebody in to help us carry that load rather than to put on the unnecessary weight of holding the gate closed?
Right.
Give yourself a break. Let them in and welcome people. And if it's so important to you that they know the early content, then point them in the right direction. For the love, I teach a Marvel 101 course. Give people what you need to have at least a conversational knowledge of the
Right.
things that you love. Um, Share it with them. And there are a lot of people who, based on my rants and my deep dives into Marvel, that they're like, I've started watching, and knowing what I've seen from what you have said, that's coming 10 movies down the line, it makes more sense now. But I have not had to defend anyone that I have known personally. I've done it in groups to where I've seen people and I'm like, what are you doing? This isn't it. Chill out.
Yeah.
There's no need for you to be showing out like this. Like,
And you brought something I really hadn't thought about in the response to that is, what do you get from it? Because those who do it out of spite, out of revenge, out of because they were made to feel bad, or they were talked down upon because of the fandom they had, usually as a child or as a young person.
yeah,
Like it's like, yeah, I get it. Your feelings are hurt, and now they're hurt a little bit more because these people who made fun of you are now claiming to be like you. But what do you get by trying to keep them out? Like, it's I understand that, like, for some people it may have been felt like it considered a safe space for them, but it's unfortunately it's not a space that you get to dominate. You don't get to say, who can and cannot be in. And if you
sure,
really think that person is a poser, they're going to expose themselves as a poser anyway, and they're not going to last
easily,
long.
quickly.
Quickly.
Yes,
And they won't last long because when they're in a group of people who know what they're talking about and are passionate about that fandom, they don't last long in those spaces.
right.
They can't hang in those spaces. So
So the thing is,
they're not going to stay where they can't hang either.
if someone, you had mentioned not being able to really be full in your black nerdness in high school. If there was a person who had specifically bullied you Like if you could pinpoint this person, this one person, and then they came to you now and were like, "Hey, Matt, I like all of these things." Then I could see where you'd be like, "Nah, bruh, we're not doing this."
No one,
you know?
no, not really like bullied, but people who were like talking down about it. Absolutely,
Yeah.
and I've absolutely had them, come and be
Yes.
like, "Yeah, and then they'd be like, "Yeah, I've been a big fan of this, that," and I'm like, "Who you lying to?"
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's most of the people online don't know these people that they're gatekeeping against. So,
Right.
what is the personal connection? Why do you care?
Yeah,
Let them in.
And those are people I feel like really like. I tried, to like understand like what are you coming from, because just because Stephanie from around the block made fun of you because you were a black nerd doesn't mean that Stephanie from Louisiana is that's not the same person. She
Absolutely.
didn't tell you, she didn't call you, unattractive because you were a nerd or because you watched anime. Like, you can't. It's tempting. I mean, I know it's tempting to put things across the board like that, but we can't generalize, especially amongst us as Black folks, because we're not a monolith, and
Right.
and we never have been, and we shouldn't have to. We should not be projecting those hurt feelings onto people trying to come into to that space, because those people coming into the space are the people that are going to be eventually begin to understand you, how you think, how you communicate, and understand those passions that you have that you now may be able to share.
Yep. So I definitely think that gatekeeping, it's so much energy, and for what? Like, just
it
hold
doesn't accomplish anything.
Yeah. So no. I like you said, there are times where gatekeeping is appropriate, but more often than not, it's not any of those times that we're seeing.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's excellent. So as you mentioned, which I as far as the different fandoms and such.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, because I happen to really love cosplay. How much use of cosplay are you utilizing as far as topic or even a recommendation of expression? Because as you are, I'm sure, well aware, Black blerd women have a really hard time when it comes to dealing with the internet comments when it comes to cosplay, because so many of the popular characters that people cosplay as are generally they're non-Black characters.
Right. Yeah.
And then
absolutely.
the haters come out and say, "Well, you can't dress as such and such because you don't look like such and such," and go from there. So, how do you take something that you're focusing on as a point of empowerment and preparing them to deal with the people that are going to try to tear them down?
Listen. I too am an early millennial, like early millennial, early 80s. Around when the Disney Renaissance was happening.
Yes.
We Black girls have been hearing that since the days of trying to be like Ariel. You can't be a mermaid. Your hair is not long. Your hair is not this. Your hair is not that. You can't be Jasmine. You can't be Belle. You can't. We've been hearing it, right? There's been a lot. Meg the Stallion has really, she's just amazing on all kinds of ways. But her embracing of her blerdness and also her cosplay has really been just great to see.
Mm-hmm.
How am I working on it within my business? I feel like I need air horns. Exclusive. First time everybody's going to hear about it. But
no. Hold on. I think I have some for you. Hold on. Do I have them? Oh, I don't have it loaded. Well, you want? I'll give you some Mario Fireball.
Yes, we'll take that. I am actually working to create one of the things I've always wanted to do is a Blerd Girl self-care con where it's just for us. And we get to come and cosplay in a safe environment where we can appreciate the costumes and the work, whether you built it or whether you bought it. Come in and just be around Black women in a safe space where you don't have to worry about, wandering hands or eyes. And we get to talk about our fandoms. We get to show off our creativity. And we also get to learn about self-care.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually in the planning phases of getting our first one together for next year. For blerd girls. And so one of the ways that I have really worked on creating spaces of safety for Black women is giving us the power to host and populate those spaces.
Mm.
We don't have to do it I don't want us to create out of spite. I don't want us to create out of fear. I want us to create in a space of love.
Yes.
And so
I
want us to create, enjoyment and passion. And so if we can create in a space where we know that we will be loved once we get there and accepted once we're there, I want to give us that space. And so that is how I directly combat it, by being like Groot and putting my roots around Black women and saying, come on in here. We can stay in here. Let's be safe in here. And they can stay with their nonsense out there as best as I can. I can't, I can't keep us all. I would if I could, but that's how I've been combating it, because it's ridiculous. It's unnecessary. And a lot of the arguments against Black cosplayers cosplaying non-Black characters are just as flimsy as the people who were like, well, this character wasn't Black in the comics. Why does he need to be Black in the movie? It's flimsy. It's not, these people aren't real. Chill out. They have real spaces in our hearts. And I don't want to minimize that. But also, if somebody else finds themselves, or they see themselves, they find enjoyment in that character, then again, what do you gain from keeping them out? What is it? So
it's unfortunately it's an era of superiority in a lot of ways, like I said before, and like I am always one for, because cosplay is different from like the character itself. Like, to me, and I talked about this last season with Japanese friend of mine. We were talking about the Ariel backlash.
Oh yeah.
And I said, I was like, one, like you said, mermaids, they're not real. They've never been real. So one, I said, if the person's whiteness was important to the story, then I would have a problem. Mm-hmm. Just like I have a problem when the person's blackness is central to who the character is.
Absolutely.
And they replace it with a white actor. I have a problem with that both ways.
Yeah. Yes.
Since mermaids aren't real, I could not care less. Now, because people, those people who want to argue always goes, well, what if someone white wanted to play Tiana? I said, well, that wouldn't work, because being Black is a central part of the character of Tiana. She's a Black woman in Nolans who is facing struggles because she's a Black woman. She gets rejected from the loan from the bank because she's a Black woman.
It's like they're not even trying.
Yeah, that story is different with a white woman. Completely, it's not the same thing. So you can't. I said there are characters that you can certainly race swap, because if their race, their ethnicity, their gender is not central to the story, you can swap it. Now, you may not. People may feel like they're disrespecting the original creator, and that's a different topic. But
absolutely,
if it's a character of no historical relevance and their ethnicity or race doesn't have anything to do with the story, it don't matter. It really doesn't. And I ask those people, do you have a problem with Lion King then? Because most people say no. I said, well, that movie's full of a bunch of British white people talking over African animals. I don't see you complaining about any of that. You think those animals would have that accent? Really? No, go watch some Tinga Tinga Tales. That's how those animals would sound.
Oh my gosh, yes!
That is how those animals would sound
Yes.
if we're
Oh,
talking about
wow.
a African story in Africa.
Core
That's how those
memory.
people would sound if they're speaking in an English accent, speaking the English language, which they wouldn't be anyway.
Anyway, yes, yes,
You know,
yes.
so like those, because it's a tough space because I think it's laziness and disingenuous on how a lot of the companies, corporations say, all right, we're going to race swap or gender swap this, mainly because they're being lazy and they don't want to
Yeah.
take the time to build up either other existing non-white characters or create new non-white characters. So like that, when people are like, oh, I don't want, like the people complaining about Michael B. Jordan developing a Superman movie, I was saying to a guy, I said, look, if they want Michael B. Jordan to play Clark Kent, yes, I have a problem with that because Clark Kent landing in rural Kansas in the
Would
1930s,
not happen for a black man.
that ain't happening. It's
Nope.
not happening. But if they make a Val Zod movie, which I would love to see Michael B. Jordan play Val Zod, that would be something I want to see.
Oof. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Now the wheels are turning. And,
Yes.
and it's like it's an established character. We're not writing things new. You've got source material. It's not hard. Now you have your writers and you go write it. It's not hard. And when people when I see people cosplay as Val Zod, and then the haters are like, well, why are you dressed up as Superman like that? Yeah, that's the Superman that exists that you just don't know about, and you just don't care to know about.
Let's keep you now.
Right.
Let's turn around on you now.
Oh,
Yeah.
don't worry. You don't have to worry about it. I thought you knew about Superman now. You don't know about Calvin Ellis? You don't know about that?
You're right. Let's turn it around.
Right?
Yes.
All right. Well, we're gonna keep it moving in our respect of Liz's time here, because we have to talk about Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh yeah, we do.
So if you're listening to this show, one, you should know that the show came out. Netflix's live action adaptation. This is officially a spoiler zone. So if you have not seen it, thank you for listening up to this point. Press pause, go watch the show, go do what you got to do. But if you don't want to be spoiled, you should not keep listening. Anything after this is a spoiler, and if you keep listening, and that's your fault. Before we go into a little deeper into the adaptation, what you think and things that we've gleaned from it, out of 1 through 5, give me your rating of the live action adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
You know what? I'm gonna give it a 4.
Okay.
I'm gonna give it a 4. Yes. Yeah. I'm hesitant to say 4.5 even, but I'm gonna give it a 4.
Okay.
But and also because we've been doing a replay of the animated series, and I'm about to teach a 10-week class on the animated series as well. So I've been going through all the media, all of it with Korra and Aang and the live action, everything except the movie that does not get mentioned. I've been going through all of that.
The M Night not talk about, yes.
Right. We don't talk about that. So, but yeah, I'll give it a 4.
No, I
okay, you said we'll move into that.
I concur because it's good. It's not perfect, but it's good. It's very good.
We're not going to get perfect anymore.
It's
the show itself was just, I mean, the animated series was perfect. We got to let that go. We're not going to get that.
People need to understand if you're going from animated to live action, you're never going to get perfect because you simply cannot do what you can do in live action, what you can do in animation.
Sure.
You just can't. Like what we were saying, unofficially before the show officially started, like X-Men 97. It's great in a lot of ways because you can do things with the X-Men in animation you cannot do in live action. It's not physically possible. We don't have the technology to make it happen. You just can't do it. So 4 is more than fair. So when we're looking specifically with Avatar, I want to focus on on women, because that's a focus for you. And women, if for those you don't know, are a massive part of Avatar: The Last Airbender's story. I want to know how you feel about the following portrayals of particular women within this live action series.
Yeah.
Starting with the portrayal of Katara.
That was a weak point for me. I'm gonna say why.
No, please elucidate. Please, I'm here for it.
Because these are young people, and so I am not at all coming in to be like, well, that person was terrible. These are young people, and they're doing their job.
Right.
One of the things I really loved about Katara in the animated series is how she didn't take anyone's crap at all. Not her brothers, not Aang's, certainly not Zuko's, right? She didn't take anybody's crap. And I feel like we were missing some teeth in the live action. And I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that from her, because I feel like that is so much of what made her resilient, and so much of what, even if we go into a little bit of Korra, I think that was so much of what made Katara the one to make it, the one that we ended up seeing of the gang. And I really missed her teeth in the live action. She was very sweet. She was very kind. She got the job done, but I wanted more. And maybe we'll get that in later seasons, but I wanted more. So that's what I was missing.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that, but you're not wrong. Especially because of how fast the season went through book one water, essentially. So how fast they went through, halfway through, that those teeth really should have been showing more. And you're right, they really weren't. She was very sweet, very understanding. They kind of gave us a flash of teeth when she fought the waterbending master in the north.
Yes.
When she was like, but unfortunately, she was more perturbed than really showing more of a sharpness to her. She was just more like, that's not right. You don't let women do this. Kind of just like, isn't this like normal? Like, it kind of felt, and I don't want to use a white caricature like a Valley Girl, but that was kind of the vibe I was getting without being totally that. It was just like she came, and granted, culture clash. The expectation was different, but I was really more expecting more of like because by this time, you've been traveling with Aang, you're a little bit battle tested, you're a little bit battle hardened, and battle, unfortunately, it hardens you. You're not the same soft person you were prior to that battle. So yeah, she definitely could have been a little edgier, especially as the season went along. Right. Speaking of edgy, that takes this totally to my next person, and the depiction of Avatar Kyoshi.
They get if on a scale of 1 to 5, they get a 20 for Kyoshi. I mean, Kyoshi's always been incredible. I mean, my husband is making his way through the Avatar Kyoshi audiobooks and listening to those books now. Kyoshi's always been incredible. And one of the things I loved about the live action is how, this is going to sound counterintuitive, or maybe it won't for some people, but I loved how they humanized many of the characters that were just lore in the cartoon.
Right.
Even Aang's early days before he went into the iceberg, I think that the first episode, I know we're talking about the women of Avatar, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention how the first episode of the live action series made it so clear that this was a scared child.
Yes.
And I think that we always knew that in the back of our mind in the animated series, but it was so, you couldn't get away from it. You couldn't ignore it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a baby. And then there were other babies in the air temple, and then seeing what happened to them, and then seeing Monk Yachts. Like, there was just, There
and,
was so much.
and not just a baby, but like he was burdened, like
Yeah.
because like most of us will never understand what it's like to be a prodigy, but like prodigies struggle with being a prodigy. Um, it's not easy to bear that burden of being so ahead of everybody else, and then for him to find out on top of being
Hmm.
a prodigy that you're the avatar and it's your job to save the world. To
And he
hear
found
that,
this on the eve of a terrible. I mean, it was
yeah,
again like we talked about episode 5 of X-Men. All of this happened in a very short time for him, and I
yes,
think that one thing the live action did really well was to give us that backstory and help us to see that. And in that same vein, it really showed us where Kiyoshi was coming from with her rage, which I've always thought was well placed, but
hmm
being able to see her and then to watch her embody and take Aang through how to save the people. I just think that the way they handled Kiyoshi was incredible. I would have loved more from
Kyoshi Island.
Sokka and the Kyo. Yes, thank
Yes,
you. Yes, I would have.
yes, no,
Yes.
because my oldest two children grew up watching the animated version. They're 28 and 25 now, and they both said the same thing. Like there wasn't enough time spent,
Mm-mm.
and they also lamented the fact that Sokka's misogyny was taken from the character because his growth out of the misogyny is such a big arc in his character
Huge.
development, and I think it does the women wrong that in the show by removing that development because you can't combat misogyny by erasing it
Yes.
within an art form. You have to show that people grow beyond it, people can learn, because no one because without it there's no redemption, there's no growth
Yeah.
if you take that out, and I think that it was a disservice to women viewers and to just the female characters by having
Yeah.
Osaka not be a jerk to the Kyoshi warriors and just to the
Or
women
to
in
his
general.
sister.
Yeah, to his sister,
Well,
just
yeah, because now.
the women in general that he comes across,
Yeah.
especially this early into the story, because he really doesn't start changing any of his ideas until Kyoshi Island, and then that's still a very slow change, as
Hmm.
as we encounter Toph later on, and the Azula and her friends and such. He really doesn't make a full switch until the beginning of book 3. So
Yeah.
not having that is tough. All right, last one. How do you feel about the portrayal of Princess Azula?
This is a tough one for me because Azula was one of my favorites in the animated series. I'm going to reserve my vote until the end of the series
Okay, that's fair.
because there was so much. Azula is another one that I really appreciated seeing her in the live action because we remember again, this is a baby. They're
Yeah,
all babies. They're
and
all babies.
that's one thing the anime series I didn't think did justice because she looked older, and
She looked much, much
people thought
older.
of her as older, but you got to remember she's a 14-year-old kid.
They're all babies, right?
Yeah,
And so one of the things that I love about Azula is looking at her with compassion that she hasn't really earned, to be
right.
clear, but
Not earned at all.
she has been raised as she's just trying to get her father to love her.
Right.
And with a father that is Ozai, you got to really do some stuff to stand out,
Yeah,
and
you can please Papa
and
Pope faster than him.
exactly, and so at the end of the animated series when she cuts her hair and she's really losing her marbles, like she's really
Yeah.
she's losing it, right? And then at the end when they handcuff her and she's got this maniacal laugh and the lightning, there's this poor girl, I remember crying for her in the finale. And So I want to see what they do with her, because what I've seen now, I am being reminded that she is a baby, but I want to see what they do with that moving forward. So I'm going to reserve my vote on Azula until the end.
Okay, I dig it. I dig that. I
Yeah.
respect that. All right. Well, we've been at it for an hour and a half, so I'm gonna cut my last two things, but I'm going to cut them only with the caveat that in the near future I can have you back, because I would love to hear your thoughts on my last two things.
Yes, and I was excited because I know the last one, I know I was gonna shock a lot of people with that one. Got very unorthodox views on that, but yeah, we should absolutely do this again. This was a ball. This was incredible.
Awesome. I'm glad you had a great time. That's the goal of this show. We try to have the best conversations, combine the sports world and the geek world. So I thank you so much for your graciousness with the delayed start and your precious time. Thank you so much for joining me today, Liz. And listeners, if you want to find out more about Liz and E616, there will be links in the show notes to her pages for those things, as well as to her podcast, which is currently on a hiatus, but 2 seasons on there for you to listen to catch up while the hiatus is currently on. And listeners, we just cannot thank you enough for the support that you provide to this show. Please like it, review it, share it. Reviews are very helpful, and shares are very helpful to just your own network. You can find the show on Apple, Spotify, Castbox, others. And if you can't find it, email us at jeeknation@gmail.com, or message us directly on Facebook at Jeek Nation. I am your host, Rocky Mr. Magic. And until next time, peace.
Ready to make an entrance, so backward cut.
Come on, cut for me.
Oh, yeah. Whoa, slow down. Whoa, speed up.
This is DJ What, and you're listening to the original Jeek podcast.